Welcome to the PLIST PeerTalk podcast entitled How to Break into an Information Security Career. We've got a truly global panel, so I'd like to thank the PLIST network for getting us all together. I would like to welcome Mafia, Chris, Dennis, David, Dean, Stephen and John, who are our expert panelists, who are all going to talk about how they broke into their InfoSec career. So, very first question, I will go through a roll call. Thank you all very much for giving up your evenings or mornings wherever you are in the world. So very first question, can you all introduce yourself individually, explain how you broke into your InfoSec career and what you're doing now? So Mattia.
All right. Let's start with a little bit of history. I mean, what brought me to the InfoSec career was mostly curiosity, because I started messing around with manuals I downloaded from hacker groups, and my computer got hacked several times in chat websites, and I wanted to understand what these guys used to do that and how to get back to them or possibly prevent them from doing that. Other than that, education, because I started studying cybersecurity for my degree in ethical hacking, and opportunity because I had the chance to meet Dave Kennedy and work with a real hacker. So these are three main components in my case. As what I would do differently, well, first of all, I would get a bachelor's right away. In fact, I'm thinking of going back to college for that. I will make sure to network more because I'm an introvert, so this is pretty hard for me. And I want to volunteer more. And if I was, would start that when I was younger and I had the chance to network more, I would probably meet more people that could help me out in my career.
Just a very quick question then, Mattia. Do you prefer communities like PeerList where you can express your views in the written format rather than face-to-face networking? Because I think that is probably a theme that will come up a lot with the community.
Well, for an introvert like me, it's easier to interact this way, but I think probably face-to-face networking ends up being probably equally valuable or even more. Because if you can, have kind of a more direct relationship with the person and he or she can understand your needs more and help you better. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, definitely. I always value face-to-face interactions, but everybody prefers different styles, don't they? So that's great. What about you, Chris? I know you're the same side as me. How did you get into InfoSec?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I mean, introverted isn't something anybody's ever called me. So I was originally in conference sales, funny enough, and I got involved in being their IT assistant and helping out on the tech side, and that really spurned more of an interest in tech and moved me into tech staffing. So I've always stayed on the sales side, and now throughout that time I was involved in placing candidates that were doing cybersecurity, and one of my best friends actually started the second biggest pen testing company in the UK. And we spoke for a long time, and after that was acquired, he had another cybersecurity company, and we were always saying that we were going to go into business and do something together. And just over 5 years ago now, we started Tyro Security, and that company is cybersecurity staffing and professional services company. So we have two arms to that business. We'll provide just cybersecurity staff. We're based in Los Angeles. And we do a lot of professional services, things like pen testing, virtual CISOs, security assessments, that sort of stuff. And so really I truly became focused just in this area about 5.5, 6 years ago, although I dabbled in it a little bit, but not for a non-tech person. my knowledge isn't too bad. I was sitting down with one of our techies who's doing his CISSP, and he was doing the mock tests, and he was struggling with a lot of it, even though he's fantastic technically. And it's amazing how you find out that there's a lot of non-tech stuff within the CISSP. And I think I was cold doing 40 to 60% results in the mock tests. So now I've kind of put myself to the challenge of actually getting my CISSP. So yeah, it's a bit of background on me.
Perfect. And what about you, Dennis?
Hey, hello everyone. Dennis Sleeper here, and I'm currently a Chief Information Security Officer for the Cabinet of Health and Family Services in the Commonwealth of Kentucky here in the U.S. What that does is any services that a citizen requires, be it a food assistance, disability, adoption, medical, that's what our cabinet does. We do the technology around all that and help facilitate it. I had an unconventional means to information security. I actually started out in the military and then in law enforcement. And as I matured and started going to school and earning degrees, I focused my career in information security. I always had an attraction to the IT side of things and being technical, and I was able to pair a lot of my military training, my law enforcement training into the security side. I always ended up back tying things to security. So my path to information security was a little different. I didn't start out as a technologist. I started out as a who likes to go fight wars and go out and patrol streets and lock up criminals. But as I started going to school and started going through my career, I started focusing in on information security. I've always had some kind of leadership role and set a goal for myself to someday be a CISO, and here I am today. So part of the second question of what do I do differently, I think the only thing I've done differently was maybe started sooner, because I've reached the goals that I've set for myself. So I can't complain of how I got there or why I got there, because I'm kind of where I want to be.
Perfect. And what about you, David?
Right, so my story is pretty trivial. There is nothing crazy that happened, but let me start from the very beginning. So I started as an IT technician, then moved to being a PHP programmer, setting up. I believe saying programmer is too much when it comes to the beginnings, because it was mostly focused around setting up WordPress websites, any other websites built upon CMSs, dabbing a little bit with SQL engines and all this basic webmastering stuff. Then I moved to being a sysadmin. And then on a Christmas 6 years ago, I've received a book from my brother. He gave me The Art of Intrusion from Kevin Mitnick. And it was such a random book. There were some sales in our city. There was a bookstore selling books for cheap. And we didn't really know what to buy each other. So we would buy very random stuff to each other, because we also weren't that rich. Actually, we came from poverty. And we would buy some cheap books and some stuff that we could enjoy, but wouldn't be that big. So he gave me this book. And after a couple of days, there was a power outage in the small village we lived. And during this power outage, when you are in a village and it's snowing, heavily snowing, and there is nothing around you because it's a small village in Poland, the only thing you can do is you can play cards, board games, or if it's taking over 10 hours, you can read a book. So thanks to the light of candles, I started reading this book because it was the only book I haven't read yet at home. And I got so fascinated. The first time, I believe, in my whole life, I got fascinated by, hey, like how it's possible that one person was able to achieve so much and to break the security of organizations that were guarded and protected by so many great security specialists. You have an army of security specialists in big corporations, and yet there is one guy, Kevin Mitnick, being able to breach into those organizations. So this was mind-boggling to me. And even though I was already a programmer and sysadmin for about 5 years, I had no clue that those things actually happen besides in movies, beyond movies. So immediately after the power came back, I started browsing net. I started searching some more info on this. I bought a couple other books. I started reading more on the subject, and I got so pulled into this that here I am 6 years later, not seeing myself in any other career possibly in my life. So this was the greatest book that changed my life, and it's such trivia and such a, I don't know, weak thing to say, but it totally changed my life just because I was so inspired by this book from my brother, written by Kevin Mitnick. And when it comes to right, yeah, go on.
I don't think that's weak at all. I think that's a great story. That's amazing. So a power cut in Poland and a Christmas tradition is what got you into security. I don't think, I haven't heard from the other guys yet, but I don't think anyone's going to beat that. That's amazing. So let me just reference that again. The Art of Intrusion by Kevin Mitnick.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Perfect. What would you do differently then if you were breaking into the market today?
Right. So there is a couple of things, I believe 3 most important things that I were thinking while other guys were speaking. And one and foremost important thing was what Mafia already said, which was I would start networking as early as possible, not because it's opening you so many doors to great career, it's showing you the opportunities that are there for you, but it's also allowing you to connect with like-minded people and to pursue knowledge or some noble goals, or to do some hacking together, do some backhacking together. Just get together with like-minded people, whether you're extrovert, introvert, whatever. There are so many people in hackerspace that are eager to work with you on any task, whether it's building, breaking, on both of those at the same time. So I would network sooner, definitely, because you can just enjoy your teammates, people you meet in security industry. The other thing would be I would start working in a big business sooner, because you can't really get this big picture perspective working in a home, or like some people call it, in your basement, when you just hack stuff, you find bugs, you are cracking software. But if you haven't ever been working for a big corporation or in any business for that matter, then you can't really reliably advise other organizations how to secure their stuff. If you've seen only one side of the coin, you are very weak in terms of how much value you can bring to an organization. So sitting a couple of years alone at home and finding bugs, reporting them, being on the offensive side but haven't ever seen what defense looks like, that's not a great thing to do. And the last thing would be in regards of how do you learn stuff while approaching InfoSec industry. So what I would do now, which I failed to do at the beginning, which is why it took me so many years to get a job in the industry and do something meaningful with my career and my life, is that I would gather as much general knowledge on IT systems, business, people, everything, but as quickly as possible, once I have this basics, as soon as I have this baseline, I would start going very in depth in any subject that I'm researching. So just trying things and scratching them on the surface will get you so far, but going in depth will make the whole difference and will make you a specialist, which will enable your career to go much smoother.
Perfect. Thank you for that, David. And what about you, Dean? How did you get into InfoSec?
I've got an interesting story, I think, as well. I started off my career out of college as actually as a teacher, and I taught for 5 years here in the United States with the middle school and high school level. And after I was burned out on that, I went into IT around 1995, and I supported desktop systems and worked my way up into a sysadmin role. After 7 years of that, I wanted to go back to teaching. So I spent another 11 years teaching high school, and when I was burned out the second time on teaching, I wanted to come back to IT. I looked around, and my friends who were in sysadmin roles either had been outsourced and had to switch to something else, or were in management. And I did have one friend who had been a bike mechanic for 10 years. He had also come out of IT. And when he went back to IT, almost immediately he was hired. And I thought, this is incredible, because I was certain that so many people would have gone into IT in the intervening 11 years I was teaching, that it would have become a much more staid profession. There would have been much more formality with regulations. There would be college programs set to deliver formal graduates like engineering or law or medicine. But that had never happened. People stayed away from IT, even though it was an extremely rewarding career. And I guess because people thought it was hard. And that's one thing I realized. If there's something that's hard to do and something that people don't like doing, and it's important, it'll be paid very well, and it'll be pretty easy to move up quickly in that. So when I came back to IT, I looked around. The sysadmin roles were gone, but the security roles were there. I liked security just from the aspect of being able to be someone who finds a way to be contrarian to all the highfalutin talk from marketers and salesmen and blue sky projections. I never, ever, ever liked those. I always liked hearing a bit of a contrarian view, whether I was teaching history or economics or even listening to marketers in my first stint in IT. I always felt, oh, come on, there's something else here. I remember one experience when I was the first time I was teaching, we were being trained on how to use computers in the classroom, and the salesman assured us that the systems were kid-proof, that they couldn't break in and damage the equipment. And as soon as he said that, I took a pen cap off my pen, inserted it underneath a key, exerted downward pressure, and then ping, the M just went flying 10 feet in the air. And all the other teachers realized these are not kid-proof systems. But you know, to me, that's security. Is where you take these high claims and you say, what could go wrong? Let's try to prevent that from happening. So when I did come back into security, I pursued the certifications in the industry. I went with a Cisco one, and as soon as I had that, I was able to get a job at a small shop. And as soon as I had a job at a small shop, a large firm came by and recruited me. And from there, I've moved on to working with a vendor. All this within the space of 4 years. Things go incredibly quickly in this industry if you want to learn, if you make yourself learn, and if you apply yourself. You can do a lot of amazing things in this industry. And I suppose that if I was going to do things differently, perhaps I would have gone into IT a little bit earlier and left teaching a little earlier to follow. But with the path that I followed and with what we have now, certainly getting certifications is a way that you are able to guarantee that you can get an interview because you get past the HR wall, as it's known. But once you have that interview, your actual knowledge is going to be vital towards getting that first job in InfoSec. But it's just, you know, basically that. Just get those certificates, get that first interview, and then keep striving for better until you have the job the exact job that you want.
Perfect. Thank you, Dean. And what about you, Stephen?
My story is actually completely different from the others. I didn't do too well through school, didn't make it into college or university or whichever term you want to use, and I just stumbled into what I call a mailroom job, which was working part of a shift team in a 24/7 ultra simplistic SOC at the time. And did that for a year, and then spent the next 6 years working my way up in the company through support manager, SOC manager, sysadmin, and it was a security reseller, so all the time learning as much as possible about every product we sold because I had to support it. After a few years there, left and came over to the UK and basically got smacked into a systems engineer role. I too am also very much an introvert, but it forced me to deal with the business side of our industry. which was not fun. But it taught me a lot about the state of companies' networks and the fact that things really aren't okay. And most of all, it taught me that everybody needs IT security, including the rest of IT. So it's a really good industry to be in. With regards to what would I do differently if I was breaking into the market today, as has been mentioned a few times, I think especially if you're trying to get into the market, some certifications are a great idea. And that would have, and getting access to the internet before I started working, because in South Africa, internet access is really not all that great. But I feel if I got access to the internet in my early teens, I would probably be in a much different situation nowadays. Maybe not a good one, though.
Perfect. And what about you, John? How did you break into InfoSec?
Hi. After I graduated, I started as a C++ developer and later on as a .NET developer. At the beginning, it were desktop applications. And gradually, I evolved to a web and nowadays a cloud developer. And I was always interested in security, but the real eye-opener for me was actually a workshop about defensive programming. It's the fact is that developers always look to implement applications according to design, implement the feature as it is designed. What an attacker typically does, he puts on his attacker hat and he tries to do whatever it's not designed for. So that's a really interesting approach to look at applications when you develop them. And I noticed that this is not the approach developers tend to take. So I thought I really want to do something with it. I want to improve myself. So I did some certifications as well, and I did a lot of online trainings. But apart from that, I also want to improve the other developers, so make them aware about this other kind of approaching applications. And if you really improve your applications, you're going to improve your overall security. Of course, it doesn't stop with applications only, but that's at least the beginning. If I reflect a bit on what I would have done differently, I don't think I would have done a lot of things differently, because it's all about finding your way a bit, and you have to explore several domains and see what fits you best. But honestly, I think it's said several times before, I should have earlier have contributed to the community, going more often to conferences, just writing some articles like on PLIST. Because if you really write things down and expose yourself, you're getting feedback, and that's really worth a lot. And this feedback you'll never get when you're just sitting in your corner and just doing it all for yourself, but don't share anything you do. So I think that's really some kind of advice, and I would have loved to have someone maybe who told me, come on, just do it, expose yourself a bit more. So maybe mentorship is also something for people trying to break into InfoSec. It's something they could look for, I guess.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody, for your intros. We have had a couple of questions from the community that I'd like to put to you. So a gentleman, 1337 Mark from the community, feels that IT candidates would have to take a pay cut to work in security. Now, I know some of you have worked in IT before you've moved into security. So what's your view? Are security candidates paid less than IT roles, or are they paid more, would you say?
Well, if I could speak to that, I'd say that definitely star developers for like ERP systems and SAP, they're going to make lots of money if they stay in that development, because that's revenue generation for a company. But within, say, networking, security roles tend to get a little higher premium, because companies want to be able to retain talent, given that a lot of them will rise on up to work for vendors if they're not well rewarded. It's a simple calculus that way. But I would say generally within networking, if you go to security, you don't take a pay cut. If anything, you'll get a bit of a premium there. But in the developer world, I've seen there's more emphasis on turning out the code rather than making everything secure.
Perfect.
Yeah,
And what about?
I'd agree with that. It's Chris here. I was going to just add a little bit to that in that when I first read this question, it really got me thinking, and I was trying to think of the different circumstances, and it would be great to go back and ask the community like what the background was of the person and have more information, because the way I see this is I would definitely agree. There are people out there that are in the development side of things that could be being paid very well already, and to move to AppSec may have to take a drop. But I would also say that application security area is a very highly paid role, so there's also plenty of developers that wouldn't need to. The only aspect I could think in regards of what we're talking about is if you're moving from any job where you have a lot of experience in one thing and a little inexperience in something else. So if you're moving into security but you don't have a lot of experience in security, of course it's great that you've got the other experience that is relevant, but it's not specifically necessarily relevant to that job. And so you've got to think that you may be moving into a job at a lower level, and so that you might need to take a drop to then move up very quickly and perhaps end up being paid a lot more in the long run, or have more job security, or be doing something more interesting to you even. That's the way I was trying to think about this, maybe working.
Perfect. And what about you, Dennis? What's your thoughts?
And those last comments are spot on. I couldn't agree more with those. The only other thing I wanted to add to this insight would be you also have to take into consideration the industry. Here in the U.S., credit unions, which act as banks but are not banks, have smaller budgets than banks. So if you move into a security InfoSec position at a credit union as an analyst, it may not be the same pay as if you go to one of the major banks. So part of that too is there's many considerations of just moving from IT to IS, right? You have to consider, as the previous statement said, the skill set, the experience level, and then to me, the industry. That makes a big difference. Some ministries have some preconceived or long-term habits of what they think pay and role should be, and some just simply can't afford it.
Perfect. And what about you, Mafia?
Well, I think in my opinion, much depends on the employer, what kind of budget they have, what they see in you, what you bring to the table. In my case, for example, I didn't have a pay cut. I was hired without an interview based solely on my previous experience as sysadmin for 12 years. I didn't even have an IT degree. So much depends on what kind of requirements the employer has for that position. But there might be a pay cut or not. I think it much depends on the specific worker profile. You know what I'm talking about.
Perfect. I agree. I think sometimes you do have to. It's a phrase, speculate to accumulate, if you're moving into a new industry.
Yeah.
So the same gentleman has asked about the future of automation. Do you feel that automation within security will eventually make some jobs redundant? And if so, which areas would you feel are at risk?
Okay.
Steve, I think you wanted to answer this one.
Yeah. In my opinion, it's questionable. I mean, I don't know who wants to answer this. I'm sorry. I'm probably interrupting.
Yeah, what I was going to say with regards to that is that actually got me thinking, because it's not really a question that's just relevant to security. It's a question that's always been relevant to business and industry. Is automation is going to get rid of some jobs, but in turn it's going to create other jobs. And looking at the way things are right now, while there's some very sparkly, pretty things going on, I don't think it's at the same level that many people think it's at right now. I think there's a lot of hit and miss stuff. There's a lot of development stuff that needs to be considered. And yeah, automation will remove jobs but create others around it.
I think
Perfect.
my experience is Chris here. Sorry, I can say that my experience is this. That, I mean, you're right. We've always been worried about automation, automation affecting jobs, and it does, and it tends to affect jobs generally where I think it's less experience is perhaps needed, and so those jobs get taken out of the equation because we can automate them, and different jobs come up as available, and people have been worried about this for years and years and years. You go back to the Industrial Revolution, people were worried about how things were going to be automated, and people find new jobs, it creates new opportunities. So I would really say, I would try and never be worried about this sort of stuff, because generally, where jobs are taken away, other jobs are created. Humans have a way of adapting, right?
Definitely. What about you, Dennis, as a CISO? What do you see from an automation perspective?
So as a CISO, I try to automate everything I can. Now, not from the position of removing jobs. I want to remove that redundancy. I want to remove the ridiculous manual labor. So my security experts that work for me, my architects, my analysts, my incident response folks can focus on real work and real needs. A good example of that is event logging. Who still has an organization that prints off logs and expects someone to look through thousands of lines of logs or alerting? Automation to me is the next logical step in making security more secure and reducing risk. Let's get away from some of those redundant, ridiculous, tedious tasks and let folks with expertise really focus on the real work, the strategy, the operationalized, and improving the security posture and reducing risk with, say, your developers and your development. So one interesting that I've been working on with Eastern Kentucky University here in the Commonwealth is working with a group of folks, professors and students, where we're trying to pair machine learning, artificial intelligence, and human behavioral analytics into preventing and alerting and predisposing of potential malicious actors inside your environment, right? A good example of that with behavioral analytics is if you got someone who's not following the dress code rules, they sure as hell aren't following your security rules, those type of things. And if we can automate that, it makes it much easier, much more efficient, and reduces time.
That's a great point, actually. You reminded me of something that we look at here. I mean, we do a lot of pen testing, and our pen testers absolutely hate doing code review, right? They've all got development skills, but code review, looking through lines and lines of code, is no fun. And there are some fantastic dynamic and static analysis tools out there that can speed up a lot of that stuff. And I think that's an example of taking away those mundane tasks that, really bore people, and giving them more opportunity to do the things that they're really interested in, and the things that are a lot harder to automate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you think about folks that are moving to agile app development, and one of the things we try to employ into DevOps is the DevSecOps, right? And moving into an agile world of development, if you could automate some of your testing, automate some of your testing that says, hey, if this happens and it's not what happened, how do we respond? A lot of that, you can write those tests, automate them, and now it becomes a part of their regular everyday work and development. And the security team can step back and do other things to help.
Yeah. I'll say for about the future of automation that really, if we start taking all these so-called entry-level tasks of just mundane repetition, the entry-level jobs are going to adapt to become learning how to use the very tools that do all that mundane repetition, and then they'll have to review what the AI has come up with is possibly flagged for violation. It still will be mundane relative to all the other jobs, but it'll be less mundane than it was before, and it'll get us closer to the goal of actual shortening response time, shortening detection times, and shortening recovery times. So yeah, I think those entry-level jobs are just going to change to be where they work with those tools.
Right, and it's a good point. I mean, you think about, now they have actionable items that has a tangible result as opposed to just doing lines of code scan. As you say, you get an alert, and now they can do something, right? They can immediately respond. So it's an entry-level job, but it has much more value than doing a manual code scan.
Yeah.
Has anybody else got any comment now on automation? David, did you answer?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I have a couple of things to add because guys provided great explanations of how it's going to look like and why we can benefit from all this, which is great. So I've got only little things left. One of the major things is that along with agile development, with DevOps, DevSecOps, all those great things, we can free up some resources and focus on actual work, on work that matters. We don't want to do the basic stuff like vulnerability assessments, static code analysis, all that stuff, because it all can be automated and it should be automated already at many companies. And it is at big companies that have internal security team. It's automated. There is so many vendors that do this for you. So those things certainly will go away to some extent and allow us to focus on other more sophisticated things to do as security professionals, because we are wasting our time. Even if we're speaking of entry-level SOC analysts, we are wasting their time and potential telling them and forcing them to review the basic and mental logs. That just doesn't make much sense. However, when it comes to the question, should we be afraid that some jobs will be forgotten or will be lost and we will be lost, we won't have work to do, then I don't really resonate with this. I can't relate to this, because when I'm speaking especially with people from US startups, from Silicon Valley based companies, they tend to totally forget that the world is far bigger than just all those great overhyped and well-funded companies in Silicon Valley. People tend to forget that there is so many organizations out there that still haven't addressed the basics, and they still need the basic vulnerability assessment, very basic monitoring to be set up, very basic penetration tests to be done. So while definitely we are moving forward and we are going to automate a lot of stuff, there is still about 80-90% of companies that will need for next 10 years regular penetration tester as we know them today.
Perfect. So the next question from the community was about the most valuable skills or knowledge to move into security. Is it sysadmin? Is it netadmin, which I know you guys have said? And what experience do candidates need, i.e. sort of fixing things, understanding weaknesses? Who would like to jump in first? I think Steve had said he wanted to jump in first.
No, John.
Sorry, John.
Okay. No worries. Yeah, I think it's kind of. I think it's kind of a broad question. It's about security. So security is not only system administrator, net admins. It's about, like I said, about application development. It's about a lot of things. So I think there are different roles that's in a company, in an organization, and it all depends on what type of job that you're doing. I guess yes, sysadmin and netadmin, sure. But if you're really good at application development, if you're really conscious about security risks, let's say, so the mindset of the attacker, I again will refer to that one. If you have this mindset and you are looking to improve applications, that's also very valuable skills to have. So I guess for application security, a good developer with a good sense of learn about vulnerabilities, learn how to hack your own applications. So yeah, it's a broad question, but at least for me, from a development perspective,
you need a good developer who is willing to do the effort to secure the applications.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
adding on top of that, I think development skills are one of the key skills. I help with the curriculums of a local college that offers cybersecurity courses, and also with the curriculum for something a non-profit called Cyberwatch West that helps state colleges. And one of the big things is there's a couple of areas that I think valuable skills. One area is actually rolls back to the last question, the ability to automate some of the things you're doing. So, have you learned scripting languages? Can you do that sort of stuff? I definitely think development skills generally are very, very useful, and that's something that I push. And actually, we're talking about introverts and extroverts. The other skill actually is around that. So it's not a technical skill. I think the ability to talk in public, to run through reports with people, to be able to communicate great written reports, but also to be able to sit down with different people in a business and be able to talk their language. So I think it's a mixture of some of those technical skills, but also some of those, communication skills as well.
Yeah, I really agree about what you're saying about communication skills. And also trying to make the translation, let's say the technical translation, from the translation for other people, make them aware, teach them, and teaching is more than explaining the topic. You have to have the skills to communicate, and I think that's really beneficial to carry out the message and make people better in the organization as well. I think that's really important.
I'd add in also that whatever technology you have that you're overseeing, know where it touches other technologies, because at those boundaries, that's where an attack might try to come in. You may be totally secure in your area, but if your neighbor isn't, and you have a door connecting to your neighbor, that door has to be secure as well. So being able to be familiar with those other bordering technologies is very important. I'd also add in a good dose of military and espionage history. You'd be amazed at how many parallels there are with security in non-technical times, and the solutions for some of those issues are similar to solutions we have to translate from an analog world to a digital world. Knowing how a castle was supposed to be totally invulnerable was breached because of an insider that turned on his king, helps you deal with your own insider threats, that you can't just count on a firewall and an IPS. You've got to have other things in place. So definitely knowing those border technologies and knowing a little bit about the history of how devious humans can be is going to help you understand where your threats are coming from and allow you to better develop your defenses.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to say, well, I was going to agree with you that strategy and looking at the history of strategy is important, along with psychology and, funny enough, marketing, because you're trying to sell people something and you're trying to defend against that. I mean, nowadays phishing attacks are a massive issue. And I found those things are also very handy, along with an awareness of social engineering. But as you said, as you were saying previously, there's the knowing the technologies that connect into security and that are next door to security. I would say one of the things that's invaluable is having a high-level overview of what exactly security is, and then the ability to put yourself in the shoes of the people that are trying to attack you, and to more so look at the devious ways that they will try to attack you and the misdirects and so on.
Right. So in my experience, to add a bit to this, is that Chad is asking a question: what do I need to move into the security space? And my answer is pretty straightforward. Seek what are the requirements in job positions open in your area, and then learn what they need, because there is no better way to find out what's really needed, than seeing what the real world really needs from you, from us. So whether it's about attacking offensive side, defensive side, we need people from both areas. So just see what's happening about bug bounty programs, how this industry is booming, how it's creating more buzz around it, and how well funded it is. So we certainly need more attackers, even though we've had so many people doing this for many years. We need defensive people, but what I'm really missing in our space are empathetic people, people who can use their social skills to manage others, to lead all those great technical security experts, security specialists, hackers, and defensive people. So we need people, great managers with big picture perspective, with this high overview on security, on all aspects of security, to be a full stack security architect, engineer, you name it, who is capable of leading the great technical people who have the specialization and in-depth knowledge. And also, I believe that we need attackers, that's for sure, because market is showing via bug bounty programs that we need more of these people, but we certainly need more people who know how to convey their own technical knowledge onto developers, software engineers, everyone in the company, because we will not ever be able to scale ourselves so we can cover the whole organization. We must embrace this DevSecOps concept, DevOps concept, where we teach every engineer, every employee the basics of security. So the missing part in each organization I worked so far is that many security professionals have hard time teaching other people the basics of security engineering or security awareness. So if you are a great pen tester, that's awesome, you can find bugs. But the real mission is to teach developers to not make the same mistakes in the future, not to fix the code for them, but to delegate it to them and give them an opportunity to fix their issue, to learn this so they won't make the same mistake again. So just to share your knowledge with others. This is a great skill which we are missing in this industry.
Dennis here. I would add a little too, and a good point to adding, addressing the question that was asked of what does a person need to move over to security. Everyone is spot on. I think the most important one that most of them said, a few of us said, was you have to pick a specialization. There's so much to security, as just mentioned. If you want to be a manager, then yes, you have to understand all of it, and that's a challenge you set upon yourself. You have to be able to at least speak to all of it and understand it. But if you want to move to information security, then you need to find that one particular area of information security you're interested in, and then focus your education, your training, and your learning towards that. Now, to give a general answer about if you need the skills to just be in information security, some of those aren't technical. The things I like to look for in folks when I do hiring is, do you have a customer service-based attitude? Do you help the organization you're in achieve their goals? Because all too long, security is known as the office of no. We want to help them get to where they need to be, doing it safely and reducing risk. And the second one that I always look for is, does this person have some good change management skills? Because a lot of the times you're coming in and you come into an organization that doesn't have a mature security posture or level or understanding. Just as mentioned, you have to teach them and train them and coach, mentor them. But are you able to be a storyteller and a change management conduit to, I'm going to show you how to do something different. And it may be because you have to do it, but we got to guide them and hold them by the hand and get them there.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. And Matthew, I understand you're trying to get back into a role at the moment. What's your take on this?
Well, my take on this is first of all, we would need a different rethinking of all the cybersecurity roles. I mean, we tend to split the thing into two different categories, red team and blue team. But in my opinion, we should go towards kind of an integration of the two perspectives. I mean, you can be a good attacker and a good hacker if you don't understand how to defend the assets you're supposed to attack. And the same goes for the defenders. So, in my opinion, there should be more career opportunities to go both ways. And, companies should kind of make sure all the people went through the same career path and understand better how to secure code and how to implement correct procedures so that certain breaches don't happen again, or anyway can be drastically limited. That's what I think.
I know you wanted to wrap this one up, but I got to add to that. So that's very limiting, and I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but information security is not just a red team, blue team, and nor is it just coding. When we talk about coding and development applications, those applications have to live on a server. They have to be interfaced with the outside world via the internet. There's so much more to information security that you have to understand and have all the parts put in. And then there's governance, there's policy writing, there's risk management, there's to be able to let folks know at the business level what the risk management is. A lot of times we talk about risk appetite that the leadership has. A lot of them don't know. They don't know. They haven't thought like that. So you talk about having a career path of an attacker or a defender. Really, you've got to be both. You've got to think like a bad guy, but have integrity. You also have to have the ability to have vendor management programs and auditing programs and compliance programs. So there's just so much more to it. So it goes back to a point that a lot of folks made of you have to pick an area and focus in one area. So that's always the first thing I tell folks when they say, what should I do when I want to get into information security? Is like, first you got to understand what information security is. Then you got to find the one part of information security that interests you. Or if you want to go into a leadership, then you got to go learn all of it. But you're putting a big challenge on yourself. And even learning one specific area, you need to understand how your one specific area ties into all the other areas. You may not have to be an expert in other ones, but you at least got to know that if I do this is the other areas or other things it affects.
If I can jump back into that, that's exactly what I was trying to say. I mean, you can have such a limited overview of what cybersecurity is, or I rather talk about information security because it's extremely complex. And most of all, it integrates with business, and we tend to consider it something like a world apart. We kind of overlooking the business implications of all that, which are paramount in the end.
Perfect. Agree. Yes.
Okay, guys, so thank you so much for your time today. I'm just conscious that the time is running away with us, so I am going to recommend that we do a follow-up podcast in January. I know I wanted to talk about, is there really a skills shortage, certifications, and I'm sure off the back of this we'll get some more questions from the community. But if there's any more comments that anybody would like to say, obviously please add them now. Otherwise, I want to thank you, each and every one of you, for taking the time out of your evenings or mornings or wherever you are in the world.
I did just want to add one other thing.
Yep, sorry.
Which is for how to get into IT security and more so how to stay in it, is you constantly have to be educating yourself, reading, staying up to date with everything that is going on. Because for every week you drop out of it, it's going to take you 2 weeks to catch up. So you really have to stay on the ball with everything in your wedge of IT security and preferably everything possible around it. It's very important.
But at the same time, if you're getting new into IT, if you do learn quickly, sell that to the hiring manager, because you may not know as much as the other staff do about current technologies, but you know exactly as much as all the other staff does about what's going to be released tomorrow. If you can learn quickly, sell that skill, and then demonstrate it. You're right. You do have to keep up once you're in there. You have to keep up once you're in there.
Just to add on top of that with regards to the learning quickly and showing that is why I've been in IT for so long. While I'm sure most people will disagree, I consider it a point of pride that I don't actually have a single industry certification. I've just worked really hard and invested a lot of time in everything that interests me, and I've let my experience talk for me. But staying up to date with everything possible is, as far as I'm concerned, probably the single most important aspect of being in the industry. Maybe not getting into it, but definitely being in it.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Is there any more follow-up comments? Any more last pieces?
No, we look forward to the next one. Look forward to lots more to cover in the next one, right?
Definitely. Next time we'll do another hour. So definitely. So thank you all so much. I will email you all offline, and we will get scheduled a date for the next one. But I'm going to stop recording now. So thank you all very much, guys.
Thanks, Rosie. Take care, everyone.
All right. Cheers. Lunchtime over here. I got to drop.
Goodbye. That was great. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Yeah.